All right, Matt. So for lunch today, I ate a kid's meal at McDonald's.
Okay.
And kid's mom wasn't too happy with me after that, but
Good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm good, man.
Good. So if you're watching the video, you can see I got my Babes Chicken Dinner House on. I figured I should say something because it just says Babes across it, and Chicken Dinner House is real small.
I thought you had like a strip club hat on. I didn't say anything.
That's why I wanted to put it out there right away. It's Babes Chicken Dinner House here in Texas. So if you've eaten there, you understand why I bought the hat. But if you don't know, you might have just seen Babes and went, what the heck kind of hat is he wearing it? So
I've never been to a strip club that had a chicken dinner.
Yeah. Do the legs and eggs buffet kind of thing.
Look, this is totally off the topic, but there was a place in Nashville that had like a lunch buffet. Mm-hmm. I think it was barbecue. Now, not that I would ever go to one of these places.
Sure.
But I heard, and I'm being honest, I am not going to eat in an establishment like this.
Me either. Nope.
I heard it was really good, and I'm going, you ate there?
Mm. Yeah, I've heard a couple people say they like to stop in there and eat lunch on their lunch break or something, and I'm like, Ain't no way. Ain't happening. But, well, before we get into the episode, I need to do a little housekeeping. So we want to say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with, and you can find some tips and tricks on podcasting if you're looking to get into that kind of thing. If you're looking to get into the biz, then there's some tips on there. We want to thank tonight's sponsor.
Sound more sexual than it is.
Hey, it's the hat, man. The hat's bringing it out of me. We want to thank tonight's sponsor, Claritin, and we'll talk more about them coming up in the episode. And while you're on the internet, looking at our sponsors' websites and ordering you something from our sponsors, also go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales. Sign up to become a patron. We have a $1, $5, and $10 level. And our $10 a month, they get the new show that we started doing, which is a totally different type of show than you've ever heard Matt and I in. And we try to put one of those out a week for our $10. And then our $5 and $10, they get the audio and video ad-free versions of the episode. If you don't like ads, and instead of complaining that, oh, you put an ad in here, well, go over, sign up on Patreon, and you can get the ad-free version of it because, yes, we put ads in our episodes. Lo siento.
He's going off tonight,
I'm feeling it today, man. It's one of those days. I told you about my week, so you understand.
Before we came on, I already knew. Is Adam spicy tonight?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those nights. But, Matt, that's all the housekeeping I got. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about another haunted prison. This one is kind of unique.
Yeah.
Not only the fact that it is just a few hours from my house.
That's true.
The building, the area that it is, the reason it was built, everything is very different than any of the other prisons we've looked at.
Yeah.
And you will see from the history why this place in particular would hold on to some spirits. Okay. So Adam and I are going to look at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee.
Yep.
Yep. Look, I'm telling you, this place is nuts. The first time I remember my first real experience with Brushy Mountain was years and years ago, back when it was after it had closed, but before it opened for tours.
I thought you were going to say you were a inmate there. Years ago, I had done time and
not quite. But it was off limits. Okay, you couldn't go inside. It wasn't open for tours, and it had pretty much been abandoned. This guy had taken a drone and flown it over it and around. And this was back in a time before everybody had a drone, before they were super affordable. But the one this guy had was really, really nice. And I just remember watching that video, and it had this music in the background going, this place is creepy as hell.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was really before I knew any of the history or the haunted aspect of it at all. Yep. Just watching this drone video, I'm going, geez Louise, this place.
Well, this Brushy Mountain was, I think, the third topic that we put on our list.
It was
for this show. It was the top 5. One of the first 5 that we put on here. And every now and then Matt and I would look at it and go, we'll do it, just not right now. Don't know why we put it off, but we came across it again looking back this last week, and we went, yeah, we're going to do that. So it's been on our list since early 2017. I think so. We've been sitting on this for a while.
Oh yeah. It's a whole thing now.
Yeah.
I was scrolling around on the internet, maybe a month or two ago, and saw where Blackberry Smoke was doing a concert up there.
Yeah.
Like, what? They're doing concerts there? And apparently, they do concerts there.
Yep. I think. It has become a whole like concert venue and restaurant and distillery and everything. They've totally laid into the tourism.
Oh yeah, they got moonshine tastings up there on top of the haunted tours.
Right. So it's pretty fascinating. But as we always say, go check our sources down at the bottom of the show notes. You can find where we found all the information. You can keep going if you're interested in it. Matt and I have not been to it physically yet. It's on our list to go to, but we have to get our experiences from the people who have been there. So go check our sources to give credit to those people. Now, like Matt said, it sits at 9182 Tennessee 116 in Petros, Tennessee. And we got to first look at what led up to the building of Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary if we're going to understand the penitentiary. Now, Tennessee actually began leasing prisoners in 1866. And by leasing prisoners, I mean like leasing them out to companies, usually the mines, to go work in these dangerous mines. As cheap to free labor, but the state of Tennessee was getting the money for leasing them out. And by 1891, the Tennessee coal mine in Anderson County adopted the practice. So, it only took a couple decades, but by 1891, the Tennessee coal mine there was like, okay, yeah, we'll hire the prisoners, the inmates in Tennessee. Now, it says that this fateful decision actually led to the Coal Creek War, where citizen miners attacked and burned the state prison, the stockades, and the mines, and then loaded prisoners and guards alike onto a train headed out of town. So it was a crap show.
No kidding.
It was one of those, to use an acronym, it was FUBARD.
Oh, yeah.
And because of that, it led up to what we're doing. But mining companies sent all these like prisoners back, and state officials called in troops for protection. So the mining companies were like, I ain't getting involved in this. Nope. And sent them back. And so they had to call in like state troops and federal troops to help protect the town from these prisoners and stuff that got out. Well, when months of small arms skirmishes ended up leading to dead men on both sides, officials realized that the cost of maintaining a standing militia undercut any financial gains, as, convict lease contracts would expire. Legislation was passed to construct the state's first maximum security prison, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. So they were like, look, we're having to pay way too much in guards from these troops to keep this practice up of just letting the prisoners be out here freewheeling in the mines. And so they decided, let's stop loaning these people out to the mines, the bad prisoners, putting them out here in the mines to work. We're going to build a maximum security prison.
From a business standpoint, it's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Because, you've got these prisoners, they're working in the mine, but they're basically just free. They're moving around, they're not working 24 hours a day.
Right.
So somebody is having to guard these people to make sure they don't just go, hey, you know what, screw this, and take off, because they're still prisoners.
Right.
And it was costing so much. Yeah. They didn't have just a bunch of guards, going, all right, you guys behave. Like Adam said, they had these militias to keep them in line.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, let's just build a dadgum prison right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just put them within four walls.
Yeah. And give them a place to go, when they're not working in the mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Somewhere secured.
Right. Yeah. Instead of just letting them, you can stay here and you can stay here, and having to have all these guards for everybody. They're like, you can go work, but you're coming back here and you're staying within these four walls. Now, this is a quote. It says, among the problems which confronted the legislature of Tennessee in 1893 was that of abolishing the convict lease system in the state. The results of the coal miners' insurrection in 1891 to 1892 made it imperative that the state take complete charge of our convicts. In order to meet this situation, coal lands were purchased in 1894 in Morgan County, and Brushy Mountain Penitentiary was built at Petros in 1896 so as to take care of the leased convicts at the expiration of the convict lease system in January 1st, 1896. So in 1896, the state had the inmates working on building a railroad spur on the land there, and also they were working on building the original prison out of wood.
Wooden prison.
Very secure, seemed very...
Very flammable.
Yep. And I actually touched on that too, because you build it out of wood, it's going to be flammable. As the prison was being built, there was actually a bunch of violence in the area. So you had all these convicts that were still causing problems, and you had deadly mining accidents. You also had chronic illnesses to deal with as well.
Oh, yeah.
So life at Brushy Mountain was tough from the start. You know, it wasn't like, it was, when it was first built, it was a peaceful place where everybody, you know, had a pretty easy, nope. It was tough from Jump Street.
Yeah, I mean, it was built out of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And it continued.
Yep. Built because of violence and out of violence and stayed violent.
That's exactly right.
Now, some of the diseases that the inmates, workers, and miners had to deal with were tuberculosis, typhoid fever, pneumonia, and syphilis. And here's the thing. Syphilis, if you don't know anything about syphilis, if you get syphilis and it goes untreated, one of the things that happens to you before you die is you go insane.
Oh, yeah.
And you get very violent.
It turns your brain into Swiss cheese.
Right. So if you got a bunch of people, violent people anyway, who have untreated syphilis, before they die, the violence is going to ramp up even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a good combination.
No,
here.
It's terrible. It's the worst.
Yeah, this is bad. Now, beyond generally poor medical care and treatment, inmates were routinely beaten for, quote, underproducing in the mines, despite the dire health conditions, and many actually died as a result of these dire health conditions and the beatings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can actually see the whipping post.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. I mean, it don't make you want to sing that song when you look at it. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. Now, Brushy Mountain never had an official death row, but all of the prisoners could basically be considered death row inmates. You know, they didn't have, you're on death row. If you got sent to Brushy Mountain, that was just a giant death row.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Unofficial giant death row.
Well, I mean, they called it the end of the line. When you talk to the tour guides, when you hear them discuss the conditions, you know, they'll tell you Brushy Mountain was where the worst of the worst went. Yep. I mean, you didn't have, you didn't really have white collar crime anyway, but those guys weren't there.
Right.
I mean,
right.
These were violent criminals.
Mm-hmm.
These were repeat offenders.
Yeah.
You know, they were not, these were the guys that weren't going to be rehabilitated.
Yep. Now, in the 1920s, when Americans were enjoying the, quote, roaring 20s, the inmates at Brushy had to spend their days down in the dark mines digging, and all of them were, quote, urged to dig faster by lashing them with leather straps. That's quite an urging.
Yeah.
Just a gentle persuasion there is all that was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could have tried positive reinforcement.
Yeah, could have. They didn't want to.
They didn't.
No, they didn't, and they didn't want to. Now, even at night, they didn't get a break from the terrible conditions. They were crammed into the original wooden building, which by this time was falling apart and was always right on the verge of bursting into flames. So it was tough even when they left the mines. They came back stuck in this overcrowded wooden prison. One thing goes wrong and the whole thing bursts into flames and they all die.
Not to mention the fact that these guys were coming back from the coal mine.
Yeah, covered in coal dust.
That's right. Not only was the building super flammable, so were the inmates.
Yeah, right. The people were super flammable too. Now, in 1931, Brushy had almost 1,000 inmates. And like all the prisons that we've talked about, this was way more than it was intended to hold. Now, since I mentioned 1931, let's look at that in a little more detail. Now, in 1931, Brushy held 976 men. This was about 300 more than the intended capacity of the building. Overcrowding was so prevalent and persistent that it drew comparisons to conditions inside the infamous Siberian prisons of the Soviet Union. And if you remember, Matt, just a couple weeks ago, we did a Patreon about a Soviet prison there in Siberia.
Right,
so
yeah.
Go back and check out that Patreon if you haven't. So the state's idea was actually to build a new building to house the prisoners in and do away with the old wooden building. Well, they drew up plans for a building to be made of reinforced concrete. Now, they set the prisoners to work breaking sandstone out of a quarry that was nearby, and they used the sandstone to build the new prison. Well, the new building was built in the shape of a Greek cross, which is interesting, to build a prison in the shape of a cross, but they had this idea that it would help with converting people. And I don't know how they thought that, but that's what they thought.
And it's interesting because when you look at it from above, the cross is situated in such a way that if you're at the front of the property and looking down, the cross is upside down, which has prompted a lot of people to say they built this prison as a sign of the devil.
Yeah.
And, it's even gotten the moniker, the devil's prison, things like that. Now,
right.
I don't think that was ever considered.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's like, all you got to do is walk around the back and it's a regular cross,
Right. Right.
I'm like,
Just
how could
walk
you
around the
say
other
a building was built like an upside down cross unless it's like vertical, it's
Yeah.
like a vertical upside down cross, which would be really weird.
But I'd like to see it just to see how that works.
But again, all of the brutality that the prison experienced during its operating times, especially in the early 1900s, late 1800s, along with the haunted aspect of it, that has prompted this to be kind of a side statement.
Right. Sure. It helps with the lore for sure. Now, the new building was 4 stories tall, and they actually had built battlements all along the top of the building. So places that they could take pot shots at prisoners trying to escape. And, you try to escape, one of the battlements up there is going to probably fire off some rounds at you and put you out.
Yeah.
Now, by 1934, it was completely built, and it had an 18-foot stone wall surrounding it to keep the prisoners in. So if you thought you were going to get out and past the battlements, you got to climb this 18-foot stone wall first. Now, for a short time, the new building actually seemed to make their living conditions there better. It was safer. There was no constant risk of it bursting into flames. Like if you sneezed wrong or somebody farted coal dust out, that it was going to catch on fire and everything. And it was a little more sanitary. But by midway through the 1900s, Brushy was actually considered to be the, quote, last stop for prisoners. If you were bad enough or caused enough problems that other prisons didn't want you, then they would send you to Brushy. And if you committed a horrible crime, murder, I'm not going to go into it. I was going to give examples, but I decided not to. If you committed horrible crimes, then you were sent to Brushy.
And not just in Tennessee.
Right. It was all the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Kentucky,
Virginia,
Alabama.
Yeah.
Yep. Arkansas, all the surrounding areas. And usually, once you got sent to Brushy, you spent the rest of your days there.
Yeah. It was literally the end of the line.
Mm-hmm. You weren't getting out. You weren't getting paroled from there. Nothing like that. You went to Brushy. You stayed there till you died. Now, in 1957, they shut down, quote, the hole. You know, where we've heard the hole in a lot of other prisons. But they then built the D block. Now, the D block, is where the worst of the worst prisoners were kept to isolate them from the rest of the population. So you think you got a prison for the worst of the worst. And then you've got the D block within that prison for the worst of the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So the D block is not where you want to go. Now, if you think that's bad enough, well, the D block was actually built on the same area of land that the old death house had been. So the death house was where bodies of dead inmates were kept until they were released to their families or buried in the pauper cemetery up on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a pauper cemetery, like most prisons do. They're on the property.
Right.
And this D block was built on the area that held these dead bodies. So, I've mentioned paranormal sludge before, that negative sludge and stuff. This place has to be swimming.
Oh, yeah.
In it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. Now, mining actually remained the sole mission of the prison until the 1960s. And in 1969, Brushy was reclassified as a maximum security prison. So it kind of was anyway, but it finally got reclassified in state documents as a maximum security prison. But inmates still worked and died in the mines for years after that. So it quit being the sole mission of Brushy, but they still had people working in the mines, 60s and all that. Now, this was until a, quote, reform-minded warden named Lake Russell, came along. He was also a former football coach at the Carson Newman College that was nearby, and he finally put a stop to the mining operations performed by the convicts. Now you think, well, that's great. He's reform-minded. Well,
great.
It probably helped his decision that the mines were losing money at the time. So it was a fiscal decision as well as maybe let's help the inmates. But I think the fiscal part of it actually helped him make that decision.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, the time he came in and shut down the mining and all that, it was around the same time that one of the most infamous inmates was there, assassin James Earl Ray. Now, if you don't know, James Earl Ray is the guy who assassinated Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during this time, he tried to escape the prison and failed. And then when he got back in the prison, he got stabbed.
Yeah.
So, didn't work out well for him.
He actually got stabbed 22 times as an inmate there.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I've said this about other people who go to prison for doing certain things. There are just certain things that even criminals don't like. And you can, as a criminal, go into these prisons and they will hate your guts.
Oh, yeah.
It's usually if you do something to kids, these prisoners ain't going to put up with it. But if you're James Earl Ray, they ain't putting up with that either. So, now in 1972, the guards actually went on strike because they were demanding security improvements. So because of this, the prison was actually shut down for 4 years. Well, during that 4 years, the security was improved, so it reopened in 1976. But it really didn't change the atmosphere of the place or the harsh conditions for the inmates. When 1982, 7 inmates held guards hostage at knife point. They stole a gun and even shot and killed 2 other inmates on the cell block that they were hanging out on. When 1989, they built a high security annex. It was a modern building with solid doors, electronic locks, and fire prevention systems, and D block became the minimum security section. So build a more impenetrable building, move the worst of the worst over there, and then D block that was maximum security became minimum security because didn't have to worry about you quite as much. Now, the prison itself closed on June 11th, 2009. Now, in 2018, Brushy Mountain was reopened to the public for tours, private events, car shows, and concerts. Brushy also houses a distillery that produces moonshine, vodka, whiskey, and liqueurs. And in addition, Brushy features the Warden's Table restaurant.
Yeah.
So it's become kind of a fancy place now. If you want to go have an interesting evening, you know, you can go to the Warden's Table restaurant, go to a show there, try some whiskeys. It's neat now, but its history is wild.
Yeah.
All right, so shout out to Claritin for supporting this episode and providing us with samples. Now, Matt, you know that allergies are my arch nemesis. Every spring, I deal with allergies stopping me up where I can't breathe. And, I mean, we fight it to be able to do this show. If we don't want to sound like Kermit the Frog, we've got to do something to clear us up and get rid of these allergy symptoms so that we can record. And, I mean, you know, I play guitar and sing. I'm not good at singing It's Not Easy Being Green, so I've got to figure out a way to clear my nose up. And the great thing is, for those of us who live with the symptoms of allergies, we can actually live Claritin Clear with Claritin D.
Right. Designed for serious allergy sufferers, Claritin D has 2 powerful ingredients in just one pill that relieve your allergy symptoms and decongest your nose so you can breathe better. This double-action combination of prescription-strength allergy medicine and the best decongestant available relieves sneezing, a runny nose, itchy and watery eyes, an itchy nose and throat, and sinus congestion and pressure with ease. Ready to live life as if you don't have allergies? It's time to live Claritin Clear. Fast and powerful relief is just a quick trip away. Find Claritin D at the pharmacy counter. Ask for Claritin D at your local pharmacy counter. You don't even need a prescription. Just go to Claritin.com right now for a discount so you can live Claritin Clear.
That's right. Go to Claritin.com right now for a discount so you can live Claritin Clear. Please use as directed.
And here's an interesting aspect of this. The prison is surrounded on all 3 sides by running water. Okay? And in the paranormal world, there's always this connection with running water and the idea that spirits cannot cross bodies of water. And even though there aren't any prisoners there now, this running water is often said to hold the spirits of these prisoners in that prison.
Mm-hmm.
That they've been unable to move on because there's so much of that paranormal sludge that Adam mentioned, and being surrounded by running water, you know, and the idea that the running water can often serve as a battery when it's mixed with the minerals in those hills. And when you look at it, especially from the air, if you go on Google Earth, you can get a good idea of the hills that surrounded that prison. That was part of the security of it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's like if you got out of the building itself, it was torturous to try to get away, far enough away, fast enough where they wouldn't catch you.
Right.
Because you've got to navigate, these wooded hills. I mean, miles and miles and miles uphill travel trying to get away with Lord knows how many, uh, prison guards and dogs and everything else chasing after you.
Yeah, it's not like it was right next door to Nashville and you could disappear into Nashville pretty easily.
Yeah. Even now, it's still kind of, it's out. It hadn't built up around there,
right?
Significantly. Still a small town. Now, the Brushy Mountain website says that visitors that come have experienced everything from being touched, pushed, shoved, even growled at. Okay. And Ghost Hunt USA says that the paranormal activities in the prison include apparitions, shadows, disembodied voices, unexplained loud bangs, growls, and physical attacks.
There's something about growling.
Growling, no kidding.
When you hear that somebody was growled at a place like that, it's like, man, that'll send shivers up your spine.
Well, if you've ever been on one of these really haunted tours, where you've got a pretty good chance of experiencing something.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll tell you, these spirits can't hurt you. But if something growls at you, it sure does feel like it could hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay? At any point, it feels like I could be hurt. Yeah.
And if something has enough energy to push or shove you, I don't know that holds up.
Right.
Okay.
I've never understood where the spirit world can't hurt the living came from.
I know.
It seems like.
Go ahead.
It just seems like you said, if they can move stuff and they can scratch you, why couldn't they do more? They could push you down the stairs and kill you. Maybe, they're not going to be able to maybe pick up a knife and stab you with it or pull the trigger of a gun and kill you. But I'm sure they have ways. I don't think there's any handbook for the recently deceased that says you shouldn't, you can't hurt the living.
Right.
And if you do, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get stuck, hauntings. Oh, you're already doing that. I mean, what?
I think a lot of it too, people have this idea of a ghost, passing through the living. And that may be all fine and good if we're talking about a stone tape kind of deal, an unintelligent haunting.
Right.
But this is not what appears to be going on up here. These spirits seem to make an effort to let you know that they're there. Okay. Jamie Brock, she is Brushy's lead paranormal investigator. And Jamie was born and raised in Petros, Tennessee, which is the home of the penitentiary. Jamie has investigated the paranormal for more than 20 years. Okay. And she has focused her efforts on Brushy since its closing in 2009. And she actually belongs to the family that owned the land where the prison was built. So she has more of a connection to it than just, I decided I was going to investigate this place.
Yeah, right.
Right. She's from there. Her family was a part of this. So she's got ties to this place. Now, Jamie focuses her paranormal contact on obtaining firm evidence, utilizing different techniques, specialized equipment, cameras, EMF meters, all that stuff. Just collecting as much data as she can. And she's obtained evidence with the Ovulus, REM pods, EDI box, and SLS camera, which is that thing that shows the little stick figure.
Mm-hmm.
K2 meters, using the flashlight thing, grid lights, where they put the lasers down, you break the grid, voice recorders, and she's even used dowsing rods with success. So it just shows how much energy is there.
Yeah.
Now, she does conduct daytime group tours. She does these special flashlight tours, and she has worked with TV shows and YouTube programs there at the prison. So she is the authority on the paranormal activity at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. Now, some of the previous inmates, and yeah, you think about it, when we talk about some of these old prisons, there's no inmates that are still around because they closed like in the 60s or something. You got to remember,
Right.
Brushy Mountain closed in 2009,
Mm-hmm.
13 years ago. So there are still people that were inmates there. Okay. And there are still people that worked as guards. So inmates, guards, and visitors, and the current staff at the former prison have all claimed to have weird paranormal experiences within the walls of the prison. They have seen, heard, felt, and even smelled things that are so out of place that they had to be considered paranormal. Now, the visual phenomena are said to be really, really common. So a lot of people walk the halls of the prison at night and they see shadow figures lurking around. Others have reported full-on apparitions that actually look like people. And then there are a few who have cited entities that do not seem to be of human origin.
Mm.
Okay? And we're going to talk about one of these, but we'll skip that one. But one of them seen, and this was the only place I could find it. I hunted for this. A part goat, part man, who has cloven hooves.
Oh, that's wild.
That's one of these entities that's reportedly been seen. Now, I dug
That's
around
wild.
and I couldn't find any other information on this. But the other entity, I did, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. But that cloven hoof thing, ooh. Now,
Yeah.
the other entity, the other non-human entity, they call it the creeper. And it is a shadow figure that is usually seen crawling on the floor. But he doesn't stay down there. The creeper has also been witnessed crawling up the walls and along the ceiling. And we have talked about at least another prison and a haunted hospital that had something similar.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
this shadow entity that was known to crawl along the walls and up on the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this isn't something that is 100% unique, but it's interesting because it makes you wonder, what is this thing?
Yeah, and that's what I thought too. When it's at different prisons, the same similar entity, what is the similarity? Obviously prisons, the violence, the whatever that goes on at prisons. But what is this entity that is drawn to that type of energy?
Yeah.
So
Death.
yeah, is it a certain specific entity? Like obviously not the same one, but the same type, the same genre of entity, that goes to places like this and does that? Or is that just how we perceive it?
Well, to me, it's kind of like the Hat Man. if we're talking about shadow entities,
Yeah.
and I know we talk about the Hat Man like there's one,
Mm-hmm.
but so many people have had experiences with the Hat Man. You got to believe that it's just a type
Right.
of entity, and that
Yeah.
there's not just one of them. That, man, they get around, So just like this, you would think this is a specific type,
Mm-hmm.
and it's drawn, as Adam said, to this kind of energy, because this is where we see it.
Mm-hmm.
Hospitals and prisons. This is where we've talked about this kind of thing before. So, the only constant I can see between those two would be death.
Right. Right.
Lots and lots of death. Okay. And even though Brushy Mountain technically didn't have a death row, there were plenty of prisoners that died there.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
If you got a whole pauper cemetery, there was enough that died there.
Yeah, either from some terrible disease like syphilis, or they wound up with black lung from working in the coal mine, or they were beaten to death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So horrific death. And it just seems like maybe that energy, that sludge that's there, may attract this really bizarre shadow entity.
Yeah.
One of the videos I watched, this lady was saying that she was up there. She's one of the people that help with the tours. That her husband was with her one night. They were checking on stuff, either like after a tour, or they were just making sure things were secure, and they're locking down doors. And he's got a flashlight, and he turns down and looks down one of the cell blocks, and this thing's coming at him.
Mm.
And he said it took up the majority of the hall, and the flashlight didn't even shine through it.
Oh, wow.
So they said it was so dark. You could tell it was a shadow, but not something solid. But can you imagine a shadow being so dark that the light just kind of disappears into it?
Yeah, it absorbs it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's like that Vanta Black,
Yep. That's exactly what I was sitting here thinking, was the Vanta Black stuff.
Well, if you could get a hold of that stuff, you could make one hell of a haunted house with that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It makes things look 2D.
Yeah.
So you could have people like standing there looking like part of the wall, and then the wall comes out and grabs you.
So, yeah. So you paint a little room with that Vanta Black, and then you put somebody in one of those black suits, those black stretch
morph
suits.
Yeah.
And they're moving around in there. Or even crazier, put somebody in a white one.
Oh,
and they're moving around, and it looks like they're just kind of floating because you can't see the edges. It just kind of fades in.
That'd be wild.
I'm trademarking this idea, so if I find out that there's a haunted house that has done this, I want my cut.
Yep. Matt is suing. Have you seen the cars that they paint in that Vanta Black?
It's
Dude, that
crazy.
is so weird. It looks like a paper cutout car.
Yeah, you can't see any of the lines, any of the curves, nothing.
Yeah. No edge, no nothing. It's wild.
I want some of it.
I kind of do too, yeah.
I don't know how you'd get it.
I don't know.
I've seen videos of people painting stuff with it.
I would paint stuff and then lose it. That would be the problem.
That's right.
I'd paint some really cool stuff and then never be able to find it because it would like disappear into other things.
Yeah, you had so much stuff painted that black, and you put it all together, and you're like, oh, crap.
Yep. I'd paint the studio here in Vanta Black and then get lost in the studio and not be able to get out because I can't find the damn door.
Yeah. Just do it, and then just wear a black shirt, and then it'd just be your head.
Oh, that's
just
a good
kind
idea.
of floating around.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's be the best green screen. All right. Wait, we're getting off topic. We'll jump back. Okay. So one night, Jamie reports being in the area where the creeper is frequently seen. And she had a group of friends with her, one of them who had never had a paranormal experience. So she tells about having a friend with her that the way she talked about him, he had been up there several times with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had played a song, and they're in the dark, mind you. And so he stopped playing the song. Apparently it was some creepy song. And it's real quiet. And he's sitting over on some steps, and she hears this noise. And so she shines her flashlight, and he's like staring right at her. But I mean, it was pitch black. And he's just looking right at her. And she's like, all right, dude, what are you doing? And she even says at first she thought maybe he was just playing something up for this one person in the group that had never experienced anything.
Yeah.
But he was making this noise. And so she went over to him, and she was like, are you going to ask any questions? And he didn't say anything. And so she's like, well, if you're not going to ask any questions, we're going to move on to another spot where we can get some activity. And she said she took his hand to stand him up and to leave, and said he immediately just went down, and his eyes rolled back into his head. And she said he continued to make this noise, which apparently Jamie is maybe an EMT or something. You know, she's a first responder is what the term she used. She said the noise was similar to the death rattle that you hear right as somebody is passing away. She said he stayed like this for 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And she even used the example. She said, cross your eyes. Okay. Cross your eyes and see how long you can hold it. It's
not long.
It's not long because it starts to hurt.
Yeah.
45 minutes. So she knew he wasn't faking this.
Yeah. There's no way.
So they kind of believed that maybe something there, you know, possessed him. Which, you know, again, spirits can't hurt the living.
Sure.
I call bull on that.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, noises are really, really common. Okay. Whether it's voices, door slamming, footsteps, and they're all in areas where there's no one there, and nothing to make this kind of noise. And they're usually not quiet noises either. In fact, in one video of a tour, they're standing outside and they continuously hear these loud metal bangs that are loud enough to cause them to stop talking and turn around. Like, what was that? You know, I mean, we're talking about tour guides that are around this stuff a lot, and it was enough then. They're like, it's, you know, we're just standing outside and we're getting it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But the scariest reports of all, of course, are the physical attacks and the people that have been touched or scratched, choked, even made to feel physically sick within the prison. And that physically sick thing we've heard before a lot of different places, where you just kind of feel like, you know, just really nauseated, lightheaded, you know, headaches, blurred vision, all that stuff. You're just like, I got to get out of here. You know, I can't stay. You know, there's an energy here that my body is just not going to accept.
Yeah.
Now, even though there's a lot of just activity, there are some spirits there that are known. And one of the most famous ghosts that haunts Brushy Mountain is that of an inmate named Jack Jett. Now, Jack was a little person, and he had the misfortune of developing a reputation as someone who would snitch on other inmates for having contraband.
Snitches get stitches.
Yeah. But one evening, while he was making a call to his mother on one of the prison phones, he was stabbed multiple times in the back of the neck, and he bled to death.
Dang.
Inmates have reported the phone receiver levitating off the hook and then back up to it again. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's that physical power that we were saying If they can do that,
Right.
then
They could do something to you.
Yep.
They could hit you with that phone receiver.
Yeah. Bust your nose with it or something.
And they even say that the small area where the phone is said to have a tremendous cold spot. And people get this general sense of dread when they're standing there near it. And they just believe that this is because of the violent and unexpected death that Jack Jet suffered. Now, one of the most haunted parts of the entire prison is the chapel. And EVP recordings within the chapel are some of the most active anywhere on the property. So while visiting the chapel, various paranormal groups have captured such words as hell, beast, and pain inside. And most of the investigations that you can go and watch online, they're done with spirit boxes. And, spirit boxes you can kind of take or leave, but some of them are better than others. And some of the responses that they get from these things, if they're legit, they're creepy as hell. I'm telling you.
Right.
I mean, answering questions, using, phrases that seem relevant to what is going on. The fact that there are people there asking these questions and investigating this prison.
Well, and that's my thing. You can't just say, oh, it's a spirit box, so it's legit. But you also can't say it's a spirit box, so it's not legit. You have to take it case by case, and depending on how these questions are answered, it could just be random noise that's coming through and you're putting a meaning to it. But if you're asking specific questions and getting specific answers, to me, that's not just random stuff coming through. That kind of leans more toward this might be legit.
Yeah. And, sure, you could figure out a way to fake that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these amateur paranormal investigators they have really invested themselves in it, whether it's for their YouTube channel or their podcast or whatever. You can tell sometimes by their reactions what's legit and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's hard to really fake surprise or astonishment or even fear.
Right.
And a lot of the ones that I watched, you were able to see genuine surprise and fear in these people's faces and in their voices. When they would get these responses that were relevant to the question that they were asking. Now, former inmates have also told stories of seeing objects in the chapel area mysteriously float across the room, as well as more cold spots that are still there even when it's in the middle of summer. It's in Tennessee, it's hot and humid. I mean, we get temperatures well into the 90s. So a building like this, a concrete structure with, they're not turning on the AC in there. It's going to be hot. And in some cases it's going to be sweltering. So if you just meander into a really cold spot, you're going to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really going to go, this shouldn't be here, Now, as typical with most prisons, you heard Adam talk about the hole, which is a dungeon-like cell that served as the ultimate type of solitary confinement. Mental illness was often found there because the conditions were essentially torture. But floating light orbs have been seen where the hole was. And given the fact that there's no natural light, makes their presence even that more interesting.
Yeah.
But the orbs that are seen are reportedly not white and yellow, which supposedly indicates a more gentle, benevolent spirit. But instead, these are purple and red, which, according to some, mean that whatever spirit is there is aggressive in nature. I've never really, orbs do not do a lot for me, so I've never really dug into specifics on orbs. Have you heard anything like this before, Adam, about the different colors of orbs?
No, not colors of orbs. It sounds like, though, that they're kind of doing the aura thing. You know how when people say, well, your aura is so-and-so color, whatever, it sounds to me like they're doing that with an orb.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever aura this orb has is coming out in the orb color. I don't know. But no,
Yeah,
I haven't heard specifically about orb color.
I've not either. So I wondered if you had kind of come across any of that. I've not ever heard any specifics on that either. But that's what they believe with these. Audio recordings have been gotten in the hole, as well as the sound of footsteps and whispers. I mean, that was a place you did not want to go. I mean, yeah, for sure. Right. You don't want to really go there now, much less when you were a prisoner.
Right.
Now, Jamie Brock says that during the early 2000s, the inmates would report seeing the apparition of a man dressed in coal mining clothing that matched what the inmates would have worn during that period. There are also reports of a light being seen from the outside, as if a guard is walking with a flashlight, still checking the cells, but no one is inside. Brock says that investigators have actually played the "I Have a Dream" speech from Martin Luther King Jr. outside the cell that housed James Earl Ray, which led to a paranormal recording of someone muttering, "Hush." Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, that's very specific, you know?
Yeah, that's very specific.
I mean, I don't know. That may just be a really good story. I don't know, but
it could be. It very well could be.
If not, it's interesting. Now, I like to do this if I can find anything, to go check TripAdvisor, because this place, they have offered tours since 2018, and Adam kind of went in all the other events that go on there. So I was kind of hoping that somebody on TripAdvisor had made a comment about their experience there. And so this one comes from a reviewer named Trail 401758. And Trail writes, "This is not our first paranormal investigation, and I could say it was the place that had the most activity. We did have a voice box and an EMF meter." I'm assuming he means spirit box.
Yeah.
And they had borrowed some dowsing rods. The dowsing rods moved in conjunction with the EMF meter, and we also got some intelligent feedback throughout the night. Said, "I personally was asking questions in one of the buildings next to a cell, and we heard a loud bang. When we asked if it was there, it answered yes, and we heard a recording that said, 'I'm here.' A few minutes later, I got smacked on the backpack. Everyone heard the noise, so it's not something that was in my imagination. And while in the laundry room, several of us saw a white light, despite the fact that we were in total darkness." So, this is just a guy that decided, hey, we're going to go and do our own investigation.
Yeah.
And this is what they got just from hey, let's go check out Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. That's pretty incredible. I would want to believe that if you decided I'm going to go take one of these paranormal tours, that you've got a pretty good shot at experiencing something.
Yeah.
So I usually will say, you could probably skip this place, or the history would make it worthwhile. Some places, the likelihood that you just go and take a tour and get something, are a lot higher than others. And I would say Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary is one of those places.
I agree with you.
A lot of activity, a lot of different activity. And depending on the time or the tour that you choose to take, you may have a really good chance of capturing some sort of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Which, to me, that's the ultimate. If you can go take a ghost tour and actually witness something, that's a home run.
Yep, absolutely. Even if it's a little something, but it sounds like Brushy, if you experience something, it's going to be more than a little something.
Absolutely. Something touch you, something grab you, heaven forbid something choke you.
Mm-hmm.
You see a shadow entity, you hear
smack you in the nose with a phone.
Yeah, all of that stuff, So, it sounds like this place is legitimately haunted in some aspect by multiple spirits and entities, and we've kind of discussed why. The history, the death, running water, the location, everything just kind of plays together. And of course, as Adam said, that paranormal sludge that just builds up over the years, it just keeps all that energy right there to allow this kind of activity at this level.
Yep.
Yep. This physicality of it is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But, we've got a lot of listeners in Tennessee. Of course, Tennessee was the original home of Graveyard Tales. So we've got a lot of friends of the show here. I'm sure we've got some friends that have been up there and just we've never discussed it with them. But, if you've got a story from Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, let us know. And one of the best places to do that is in our Facebook group. Thousands of people coming on, sharing these stories. We love to hear them. No one's going to call you a nut job or anything else. We just want to hear these great stories.
They reserve those comments for Matt and I.
That's right. In a DM. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah, usually.
Your nut jobs. You know that?
Yeah.
We those do emails, know that.
Yeah, those emails I read once a week and send Matt a screenshot of laughing.
That's right. Look at this,
Look, it's the weekly nut job email. And that's not as cool as it sounds.
That's right. After a while, you're kind of like, maybe we are.
Yeah, that could be.
Don't forget to check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And there you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show and you can become a patron. And don't forget, our $10 patrons are enjoying our new show, Side Quest. Yep. If you haven't checked it out, you need to. It is a lot of fun. It is totally different from Graveyard Tales. It's a side of Adam and myself that you haven't heard yet. So go on there and check that out. Until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.